Hello, welcome once again to Leto's Law. I'm Steve Leto. Doing a follow-up on the tattoo story from the other day. The state of Kentucky has proposed new rules, and among them is a rule that says you cannot put a tattoo over a scar. I have a copy of the rules in front of me that are proposed. We'll discuss them in a second. We'll also discuss the most common misconception people have. I had a lot of people commenting below, even emailing me directly saying, Steve, it's obvious this is for law enforcement so they can identify you based on your scars. That is not why this is proposed. That's actually not a good reason anyways, because first of all, I'm legally allowed to change my hair color. I'm legally allowed to change my name. And you're thinking I'm not legally allowed to change my scars for law enforcement? It's just dumb. But besides that, the fact that law enforcement has a card someplace, in the old days, let's say, that actually has like your mug shot and identifying marks, and it has, tattoos and a scar. You actually think that they're going to pass a law that you can't now alter that scar because it's part of an official record. But besides that, if you're getting a tattoo done, that means you're not in prison. And that means you're probably not, at this moment, a criminal. You may have been a criminal, but you're not one now. And so I don't think that a law would withstand constitutional scrutiny, even despite the fact it's going to fail on all the grounds I discussed in the other video, whose link is below. But you can't say, well, because law enforcement needs to keep this mark on your body, you can't cover it up. That would be absurd. That would be absurd. And no one's made that argument. But what we're talking about is a possible rewrite of the laws in Kentucky that govern tattoos, tattoo parlors, and the tattooing of people. And so I have a copy of the proposed statute right here. This is proposed. It's going through the process that bills go through to become law. And one of the things I point out to you is that when you're studying statutes, I mentioned before, these blue books are the Michigan laws. And whenever you read a proposed law, most states will do this, where they'll put together the law, they'll put lines or strikeouts through the sections that they want to delete. And then they'll underline the sections that they're proposing to add. So it's pretty easy to quickly go through and see, oh, they're striking this or adding this. And sometimes you can tell by looking at it what they're getting at. So I can shed some light on this for you. But just so you know, the Cabinet for Health and Family Services of Kentucky, Department for Public Health, Division of Public Health Protection and Safety has proposed an amendment under the statute 902 KAR 45:065 tattooing. And it does say that the KRS statute requires the Cabinet for Health and Family Services to promulgate administrative regulations necessary to operate programs and fulfill the responsibilities vested in the Cabinet. And one of the things, of course, is that they oversee tattoos and tattoo parlors. And you can imagine this is something that they're probably regulated in all 50 states and probably around the world in places that have regulations, because if a tattoo was done badly or in an unsafe environment, that wouldn't be good for the population to go in and get tattoos at places like that. So we want there to be a certain standard level of care and cleanliness at a tattoo parlor. So just so you know, and this is one of the things that people always find interesting when I talk to them about statutes, is that there's a definitional section here and it defines things that you might not think would need defining. Hand washing. They define hand washing. And later there's a section that says you must wash your hands if in fact you are a tattoo artist about to perform a tattoo. Hand washing means the following: wetting hands and forearms with warm running water between 101 degrees Fahrenheit and 120 degrees Fahrenheit, applying liquid soap and thoroughly distributing over hands and forearms. So just so you're clear on this, hand washing involves up the elbow. So according to the Kentucky statute, that's part of your hand. Just pointing it out for you. Applying liquid soap and thoroughly distributing over hands and forearms, rubbing hands vigorously for 20 seconds, covering all surfaces of the hands, forearms, and fingers, paying special attention to the thumbs, backs of fingers, backs of the hands, and between the fingers, then rinsing hands and forearms thoroughly to remove residual soap, and drying hands and forearms with paper towels dispensed from sanitary dispensers. I could spend 3 days on the comedy material that's in here, okay? So for instance, if you rub your hands vigorously for 19 seconds, you didn't wash your hands, okay? And if you didn't pay special attention to the thumbs, backs of fingers, backs of the hands, and between the fingers, you didn't wash your hands. And likewise, drying your hands is part of washing your hands. So in other words, they don't say wash your hands, then dry your hands. They just say wash your hands. But that involves drying your hands. I know some people are going, what? Just try and keep up, my friends. So here's the deal. They have all these definitional things, and they talk about what you have to have if you're going to be a tattoo artist or a tattoo parlor. So for instance, a studio has requirements. A studio shall be kept clean and in good repair. It shall be free of insect and rodent infestation. Now, the interesting thing is that there's a concept in the law called expressio unius est exclusio alterius, which means that the expression of one thing excludes all others. So if I give you a list without a catch-all at the end, if I say acceptable fruits are oranges and lemons, I say bring a fruit, and you bring me an apple. That's not on the list. And you go, yeah, but you said bring me a fruit. I said, no. Bring me a fruit that's, an acceptable fruit according to this list. There's only 2 listed. So only listing these 2 means none of the other ones count. So when I tell you that your studio must be kept clean and in good repair and free of insect and rodent infestation, that means that it's okay if it's bird infested. Right? We could argue about this all day long. And so they talk about the fact that, you cannot permit the presence of a pet or other animal in the studio. So I guess a bird would be another animal. So if you're permitting its presence as part of an infestation, perhaps I'm wrong about the bird infestation. So the question then becomes, is there some other animal that could infest your studio that is not an insect or rodent that you wouldn't want there? But like I said, we'll get to move on to the more important things. Now, I've joked before about how I've seen courthouses that have signs out front that says things like no bikini tops. And you know darn well they put that there because some litigant came into court wearing a bikini top. Okay? So here it actually says that when you empty your mop water, when you're cleaning your studio, you must empty mop water without placing the mop bucket into the sink. Again, they micromanage how you clean your studio. Again, I'm not saying whether or not they have the right to do this, they ought to do this. I'm just pointing this out. I have an amazing amount right now of sorrow for tattoo artists in Kentucky. Because right now, they're looking at this the way that I am, but they're going, I got to do this stuff. And it's not that they have to keep the rodent infestations out and not put their mop bucket in the sink. They've just got to go through here and see what little things they're being micromanaged on. I've been in a tattoo studio on a couple occasions. Never got a tattoo, but I've been in a studio. The ones I was in were sparkling clean. In fact, they were cleaner than some emergency rooms I've been in. Okay? So I don't think you need to go into that guy's studio and watch to see where he puts the mop bucket. But, like I said, if you're in Kentucky, this might be the kind of stuff you've got to put up with. So emptying your mop bucket without placing the mop bucket into the sink and then using an approved disinfectant and so on and so forth. So, oh, by the way, you must have a sink for each artist with hot water between 101 and 120 degrees. And why is that? Because when you wash your hands, you need water of that temperature. So I guess the question then becomes, when you inspect a tattoo studio and you're from the state, we're here to help, do you actually walk in with a thermometer and check the water temperature of the spigots? They probably do. But I'm saying this is the kind of stuff that I'm not sure if a lot of people understand, this kind of regulation. And again, I am not railing against government regulation. I think there's a lot of government regulation that does good. So the point is, if you run a tattoo studio, you got to do all this stuff just to comply with the law. And so when someone walks in and goes, how much for a tattoo? And the guy quotes you a price. And you go, that's outrageous. Why would you charge that much? All you're doing is drawing on my... No. Him drawing or her drawing on your body is the tiny little tip of the financial iceberg. Besides the rent and the utilities and the employees, he's got to make sure that his tap water is between 101 and 120 Fahrenheit, or he's going to get fined by the state of Kentucky, and he might actually have somebody spying on him next time he mops the floor to see where he places his mop bucket. Okay? So the guy's not just drawing on your body and getting a check. So here's another rule that always strikes me as funny. Tattooing of minors. No person shall perform any tattoo procedure on a minor without parental consent. And then they go into the explanation of how you can do this. And I notice that all of this language has been added, which makes me wonder if there was any law against it previously. I've met a lot of people who got tattoos when they were minors. And in many states, especially the way I heard it done, it was probably illegal. Section 8, client information and records. Before receiving a tattoo, the client shall be provided written information that tattooing poses a risk of infection, that tattooing is permanent, and that removal of a tattoo may leave scars. There's a bunch of other stuff they got to give you here too, but again, they must inform you in writing that tattooing is permanent. Now, I know there's a divided camp on this one, because some people say, Steve, unfortunately today, we have to inform people of the obvious. Otherwise, you're going to get the lawsuit from somebody who says, I got this tattoo on my arm, got sick of looking at it, tried to wipe it off using water between the temperatures of 101 and 120. It wouldn't come off. And now I'm stuck with this? What's up with that? I'm going to sue somebody. So, yeah, I suppose. But then again, if somebody's really not aware of what a tattoo is, should they be getting one in the first place? But again, another story altogether. But so that's just more of the regulations that tattoo parlors and tattoo artists face. But that gets us to the proverbial Section 10. And Section 10 is the meat of this one because it says, standard operating procedures for tattooing. Tattooing shall not be applied on skin which has a rash, pimples, evidence of infection, open lesions, mole, sunburn, or manifests any evidence of unhealthy conditions without written clearance by a medical physician licensed by the Kentucky Board of Medical Licensure. So I jokingly said in my previous video that if you walked in with an open sore and said, quick, tattoo this, I'm assuming the tattoo artist would recoil. But the law says they've got to turn that one down, okay? Along with the other stuff. But number 2, and this is the one that has no explanation, it says tattooing of scarred skin is prohibited, period. Then it says the tattoo artist shall follow the procedures listed in this section in preparation for tattooing and describes what you will do to prepare to do the tattoos, including you can't smoke, eat, or drink while you're doing it in the workstation and so on and so forth. But that gets us back to the tattooing of scarred skin, okay? It's in addition, it's been added, it's underlined. Tattooing of scarred skin is prohibited. And I actually poked around the internet yesterday and I read a lot of comments on this. And apparently there are some medical conditions that can either arise from a tattoo being put on a scar, and they're very, very rare. And there's also some situations that can arise where a tattoo is put over a scar, and I heard this from people who know about tattoos, and because the scar tissue is different than the surrounding unscarred tissue, that can also have problems, which is how the tattoo is going to look down the road. And I've actually heard from people who said it's a sketchy area. If you're doing a tattoo to cover up a scar, and they know what they're doing, apparently they can do that and work with the scar, because they have to. But also, on the other hand, if you get somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, and they go, well, there's a little scar here, but I'm going to put the first eagle over here, the second eagle over here, the motorcycle's in the middle, the snake they're fighting over is in between, in a part of the struggle, and then there's going to be a rainbow, of course, going over here. Part of the rainbow's on the scar, part's not, and then, of course, the unicorn that's jumping over all of this, and he's on a motorcycle, by the way, he's actually over here on unscarred but hairy skin. So, you know, when you get that beautiful thing done and you look at it before it's put on your skin, you go, wow, it's beautiful. I want to see all this in action. And then they go, okay, here's what's going to go on your skin. And in the middle there's a scar, and it's not lined up with anything. I have to imagine that might cause issues down the road because scar tissue might age differently than non-scarred tissue. But apparently there's also some conditions that can arise from the tattoo and the scar. But again, rather than saying it's prohibited, okay, maybe at the very least they could have simply just said, tattooing should not be applied on skin which is rash, pimples, evidence of infection, open lesions, mole, sunburn, manifests any evidence of unhealthy conditions, or is scarred without written clearance by a medical physician. Now, I would argue that even that's too much, to say you've got to get a doctor's note to get a tattoo put over your scar. But it would make more sense to me to say, why not go back that previous section? It has the written parts. Client information before receiving a tattoo. The client shall be provided written information that tattooing poses a risk of infection, that tattooing is permanent, that removal may leave scars, or that tattooing over a scar might also have its own issues for which you might want to consult with your doctor. Period. That solves it. Just let them know. There's a chance there might be something that goes on here. You might want to talk to your doctor. Okay? You might want to. I don't think you should be required to go get the note from your doctor. I don't think that's micro policing here, okay? But I think if you give them the notice that says, hey, look, there's a bunch of things here, including that tattoos are permanent, that you should know about. And number two, we're putting something over a scar. Just understand, scar tissue is different than unscarred tissue. And there's issues that might arise. And if you want to, you can go talk to your doctor, because I'm a tattoo artist. I'm not a dermatologist. But that would solve the problem for me. So you say, okay, Steve, but I'm curious. What do you think really drove them to do this modification of the law after 15 years, which they complained about? And one of the things that many legislatures do now is they actually have somebody come in and analyze what the new statute's going to do. So regulatory impact analysis and tiering the statement, T-I-E-R, as in levels like tiers. This is not about crying, although some people might do that too. But they did some analysis on this, and buried deep in the analysis is a fiscal note. And by fiscal note, I mean money. So just so you know, how much revenue will this administrative regulation generate for the state or local government for the first year? Because when they changed these rules, they upped all the costs of all the different things of doing business as a tattoo parlor in Kentucky. It is estimated that the changes to the fee structure will generate $172,800 from tattoo studios and $133,700 from tattoo artists in the first year. So they're going to pick up about $300,000 by these changed rules. Now you might say, Steve, but they're not making any money off forbidding the scars being tattooed over. No. But what happens is this. Every so often, somebody goes, hey, that set of statutes needs to be updated. Did you realize it doesn't describe how to wash your hands? Do you realize it didn't say, how to manipulate your mop and your bucket? So somebody said, well, we should probably update those laws. And of course, when legislators say update laws, they're thinking, more fees. Because they can say, oh, we haven't changed this fee since the law was changed. So all the fees get upgraded. So the net result was that somebody sat down and goes, hey, let's update these laws. And somebody said, I think I heard someplace that there can often be a weird skin issue with putting a tattoo over a scar. Let's make that illegal as part of our new rules. And a lot of times something like this would pass, nobody'd catch it. Luckily, it got caught this time, and publicity is being paid to it. And again, I'm not the champion of the tattoo artists. Okay, when I see laws that seem weird to me, I point them out. So I think that portion of the law needs to be struck down. But the reason they're doing this is money. We should have known this all along. They're going to raise $300,000 just in the first year alone by these new rules. And while they were in there writing and tinkering, somebody said, hey, let's throw in this little prohibition against tattooing over scars, without thinking, oh, by the way, it's never going to survive any court challenge ever. But that, my friends, is what's going on in Kentucky. If you're in Kentucky, or if you're in the industry of tattoo artistry and this concerns you, I urge you to become politically active. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later. Bye-bye.